Hi there. So I read this book called Ultralearning by Scott H. Young. This is actually my second time that I've read or actually listened to it as an audiobook. I wanted to learn actually how to learn even better because I'm actually studying and working at the same time, and I felt that in the past this book had some extremely good tips on exactly how to learn. So I decided to revisit it. I haven't really done a deep dive into this book's principles before, so I decided to make a video about it to do that. So in this video I'm going to explain to you basically the core concepts of ultralearning. So first, what is ultralearning exactly? Well, it's a self-directed, aggressive learning strategy to master skills quickly. So the ultra means that, well, it's a very aggressive style. It doesn't necessarily have to be that, but in this book the gist or the feeling is that you want to pursue some type of an extreme learning project to learn something. For example, a language or a new skill, perhaps to play an instrument or coding, and it usually is going to involve multiple hours per week to study that. So this is the ultra part, and then of course learning is how to learn that skill. So I'm going to apply these principles to how it would look like to pass an HSK exam. An HSK exam is a Mandarin proficiency exam, so the language test of Mandarin, and how that would look like if you would apply these principles in the book to pass that exam. There are in total 9 principles in the book, and I'm going to go through them one by one. So the first part is meta learning. So learn how to learn Mandarin, or in this case actually how to learn to pass that exam. You would begin by actually doing a research on how to pass an HSK exam, for example HSK 3, in a very quick manner. You would break down the exam structure and then design a study strategy. The book mentions this 10% principle, so you want to spend 10% of your whole study time in doing the research of how to exactly pass that thing or to learn that skill that you're going to do. And in this case it would be how to pass HSK exam in the least amount of time possible. The next principle is focus, so no distractions. You want to just block away everything to keep yourself 100% focused on the thing that you want to learn, and in this case it would be just 100% focused on passing that exam. So when you're studying, you're only studying. Put away your phone, put away all notifications, try to be in a calm environment where you are able to focus with 100% clarity. Directness, so you want to study the thing itself that you want to learn. So in this case it would be to just try to pass HSK exam, and in this case it would be, in the first case, to do mock exams. So you want to pass an exam, so learn to do that exam. And there would be, in the case of HSK exam, there would be a lot of mock exams available online, so you would want to focus on those and then basically analyze what you're weak on and then focus on those things. And you would also want to understand, for example, the exam structure, and then only use HSK material to really prepare yourself to take that exam. The next one is drill, so sharpen your weakest link. So for example, you could do an HSK mock exam, and then you would look at where did you make the most of the mistakes, and then you would just really focus on those parts and try to become stronger at that. Why do you want to do that? Well, if you would analyze your overall performance, it would make most sense to focus on your weakest parts, so then you would gain the most progress with your study time spent. and you could then isolate your study time into focusing on these weak points, and then perhaps then use your study time also to strengthen your other parts that you want to become good at. Retrieval, so pull from memory, don't reread. So it basically means that you want to test yourself. Do you actually understand the thing that you've been learning? So for example, there were a couple of things or techniques that you can do to do retrieval. One of these things is, for example, that you can, in the case of an HSK exam, you could do flashcards. So on the one side of the flashcard, you have the question, and then on the other side, you have the answer. Other things that you could do, for example, is to, if you're reading an HSK textbook and you've just learned something, you could just, right after learning it, you could close the book and then try to freely explain what you've just learned. The gist of this part is that you want to really pull out from your memory what you just learned, and don't passively reread or intake what you just learned. The book made an emphasis on the so-called testing effect. So you want, instead of rereading something, so if you would have, let's say you've read a book about something, you wouldn't want to do what would be the easiest and the most common thing to do, so basically just reread the information, but you would want to test yourself on what you just learned. It's a more demanding way to learn, but it's definitely a bigger bang for your study. So bigger bang for your study buck. Well, let's go forward. Feedback. Basically you want to receive feedback on your performance. This could, for example, come exactly from doing a mock. In the case of an HSK exam, you would do a mock exam and then see where you failed, and then you can know that, okay, so are you, for example, progressing in the most recent mock exam that you did compared to the previous one that you did, and then you can see your overall performance. Other feedback that you could have is, for example, if you're taking an HSK course, you could get feedback from your teacher. But this is basically what feedback is about. The author mentioned other forms of feedback, which I don't recall here right now, but you can check them out if you are interested. Retention. So you want to keep in your memory what you've learned. In the case of taking an HSK exam, for example, if you're learning vocabulary for the HSK exam, you would want to ensure that the vocabulary that you've learned, you keep retaining it, so that you don't forget it, but you retain it for as long time as possible, maybe forever. For this, there are spaced repetition systems on such flashcard apps as Anki and Quizlet, and you could come up with some other type of retention system so that you actually retain what you've remembered. I think that perhaps the book did mention that it's been studied that it's better to do spacing between your study session. So basically that you divide your study sessions into different chunks, and then you take a longer period of time to go through all of that material, because that will support your memorization, your retention, as compared to cramming, which is this one night before study marathon that you can do, and you can retain a lot of information just before the exam, but in the long run you will lose more of that, you will forget more of that study material. Intuition, so build a stronger in-depth understanding of what you're trying to learn. I think that this was, for me at least, the hardest part to grasp. So you want, basically what I got out of this was that you want to build depth in the thing that you want to learn. So for example, if you would be taking an HSK exam, you could, for example, then immerse yourself into Mandarin podcasts or books or TV series and really build an in-depth understanding of the target language. Or then, for example, you could be explaining the material, what is the difference between this HSK level and that HSK level and the different grammar points. This is my understanding. But I guess that I haven't really built an in-depth understanding of this principle just yet. And finally, experimentation. So try different things to really master this skill that you're trying to do. So you can change the study format, place, time, the way that you're learning. So for example, what I'm doing at the moment is, for example, trying different lengths of doing work. So trying different ways of working to see which actually works the best in terms of productivity, energy, and so on and so forth. So try different things. That's experimentation. So my own comment of this book, that it really works. I think that this system of using these principles can really help if you're trying to pick up a new skill or a language or whatever it is that you want to learn. This is really a system of understanding, practically speaking, how to learn anything, I think. It works, but it's really intense, it's time consuming, and in the long run it would be unsustainable if really taking the ultra learning ethos to the extreme. Scott H. Young did mention in the book that when he was, for example, doing his challenge of learning 4 languages in 12 months, by the end of that time he was getting tired. So I think that this really shows that it might be that this is, doing tens of hours of very extreme learning is a short-term strategy. But using this as a long-term strategy might make you fatigue, burned out. So you wouldn't really want to do that if you really want to do peak learning. So I was thinking that what if you could actually do this type of very intense learning but avoiding the burnout? So I would suggest applying sustainable ultra learning practices. So high intensity, low volume, long-term strategy. So it would be basically, like bodybuilding, but for your brain. Well, what do I mean with this? Well, I mean that you would want to make sure that there's a skill that you want to develop. So for example, in bodybuilding, you want to build your muscle, but you want to do that in the long term. So you want to build it in a very sustainable way. So according to this study done by Erickson, and it's also mentioned in the book, you are able to do this peak learning or peak cognitive work for around 3 to 4 hours per day. So you want to really focus on that to, so to say, work with your biology and not work against it. So you want to ensure that you have proper rest, recovery. There's a typo here. So you want to make sure that you have proper stimulation. That would be taking the most advantage out of these 3 to 4 hour peaks. And if you really want to go deep into that, you want to make sure that you're working with the ultradian cycles. So these 90 to 120 minute cycles, that's how our brains are working with, or how our brains are working. And then having these 15-minute breaks between. So that would mean that you would have these around 3 90-minute learning cycles in a day with at least 15 minutes of break between the cycles. And then when you've done that very intense learning, you ensure that you have also proper recovery in the first place, meaning proper sleep and not doing any more cognitively burdening tasks. That would also mean work, and also proper nutrition. So eating healthily and well, that can also be mental nutrition, maybe taking a rest or, well, but in the first place, that's actually what you're eating. And maybe one more thing that I haven't mentioned here is that maybe as a one more 10th rule would be actually defining the desired outcome for yourself. Well, the meta-learning part in the book does really mention already that you want to define what you want to learn, by when, how. But I think that it could be made even clearer that the first principle would be defining the desired outcome. So that would be the questions, answering the questions what, by when, and why. Why do I want to learn? Why do I want to pass an HSK exam? Well, I would want to, for example, study in China, or then I would want to pass it by this and this date, and well, the why. And then meta-learning would be the how. That's it. So, ultra-learning really does work when done in a smart way, and you can also do it in a sustainable way. I'm convinced by that. So that's it. If you like this video, please leave a comment. That will let me know whether to do more of these types of book reviews, or talk more about the principles in underlining in books. So thank you. Until next time. Bye bye.